We live, it's Tuesday. And Coach, we talking about the trade deadline right now, right? We talked about our most impactful trade deadline acquisitions. And we want to talk about which team will regret not making a move. And Coach, since you're here, you can go right ahead and kick us off.
Well, I would definitely want to say the Green Bay Packers, man. Especially with the talent of receivers that was out available with Brandon Cooks, Chase Claypool, so on and so forth. I was just surprised that they didn't do anything, and I'm just disappointed. And it's going to lead up to the rest of the season where the Packers offense will not make any type of improvement whatsoever.
Zach, talk to me.
Yeah, I think the Packers are the one team a lot of people are going to answer this question with, and I totally understand why. It's clear that team is right. And the most fascinating thing about the trade deadline to me is that each team, it really gives them a chance to evaluate, and it shows us, the viewer and the consumer of the sport, like, okay, how does this team really feel about their chances to win going forward? Like, I'll give a quick example, like the Giants, right? They're sitting here at 6-2. The NFC East is somehow still in reach. They are likely going to be a playoff team if they could just rack a couple more victories, but we know they're decimated at the wide receiver position right now. And it's interesting that they weren't really willing to give up any future draft capital to address that wide receiver position. And I'm not even saying it's right or wrong, but it's interesting that they, with a quarterback whose future, like, we don't really know what that is yet in terms of with the Giants or not, they just don't really have a lot of juice on the offensive side of the ball. And I am interested that, like, wow, they weren't even really willing to give up a third. Like, Kareem Hunt was available for a fourth-round pick, not really for the Giants in particular. They have a running back, but the Rams are another team that comes to mind. The Buccaneers didn't make any moves either, the Packers as well. So it really shows us teams that might not feel great about their chances going forward, and they're not really willing to give up any assets for the future, which is interesting. I think the Packers are the one team a lot of people are going to point to, and I agree with everything Coach said. But I have a couple teams in that range, like between the Giants and the Packers. You could throw the Rams in there, teams that we were really going to see today. How do they feel? Are they going to go all in with the trade or not? And I was interested by what those teams did.
You see, I think, to be honest, right, the two teams, and I know it's going to be the trendy teams, but hey, it is what it is. We all know what these teams need is the Giants and the Packers. Those are the top two teams. Now, if I had to say which one of those teams I think needed a move the most, I agree with Coach. I got to go with the Packers. And I'm going to start off with the Giants here. Even though they have no talent outside of Saquon and their offense is very Saquon-centric, at the same time, who knows if they could pull a Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I know those things are not guaranteed, but I do think they are playing for something. So at least if it came down to the Packers or the Giants for Odell's services, the Giants, to me, will be more lucrative, if you ask me. Now, I'm not Odell. I'm not sure what he is inquiring about, what he's looking for, whether it be quarterback, whether it be coach, whatever. But at the same time, I think the Giants, because they are still in play, they have an opportunity to probably snag Odell. Whereas you look at the Packers, they are 4 games back. They're 3-5. And more than likely, at best, there'd be a wild card team having to go on the road. And we all know Aaron Rodgers' 5-6 record. Now, obviously, by not making a deal for the Giants, it's Odell or bust, which, it's not really a place where you want to be. But at the same time, who knows? You had them before. You have connections. If there's any two teams that could be able to pull him, it should be you or the Rams. So I guess the Rams, the team that you brought up, could be in that category from an offensive standpoint, right? We're not talking defense right now at this very point in juncture. But I agree with Coach in the sense that if you're the Packers, we know what the problem is. They was getting decimated by the Bills. The score was an outlier. They were down by a couple scores, and they kept running the football. They wasn't even trusting the passing game. They couldn't even trust none of those wide receivers. Now, I know Romeo Doubs, he made a good play in the end zone, an excellent catch, showed great body control and all that to make the catch. But they were running. That's where they felt most comfortable with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. They wasn't even trying to pass to the final drive to try to win the game. So I think if you're Aaron Rodgers, we all know his championship window was open for the last decade. The Giants, they just starting to do good. They are how can I say, they are overachieving right now. So who knows what their future holds, right? If you're the Packers, you don't have that much time. Aaron Rodgers is about to be up out of here. He won back-to-back MVPs. If there's a year that you should go all in, it should be this year when Aaron Rodgers is still in his prime because he's only going to get older. So if you're the Packers, you should have went all in. We all know the same dance, when it comes to them not paying for a wide receiver, them being cheap, and cheap is going to cost. Listen, we are talking about teams paying. That's how you win. Zach has this fascination, and I agree. We have this fascination, me and him, we're going all in, trying to win. The Eagles, paying. Pay up. The Buccaneers, pay up. The Rams, the last year, pay up. Trying to go all in. And the Packers like, nah, it's too expensive for me, bro. That's why you're going to lose. So, yeah, I agree with Coach. I'm going with the Packers. Coach, go ahead.
Or I'll say this quickly. Like, it's very rare that you see a clear and obvious problem in the NFL, because if we see it, like the front office and the people upstairs, they definitely see it. The Packers have, even when Davante Adams was still there, the Packers needed a number 2 wide receiver. We've been saying for a while that they should have taken T. Higgins over Jordan Love. That is one draft pick that to this day, I still don't understand how they made. And I get it, in Matt LaFleur's first year, Aaron Rodgers was not playing like an MVP. He even looked like, okay, maybe he could be on the decline a little bit, and that's probably why they took Jordan Love there. But they needed a wide receiver, and that was with Davante Adams. That was with the best receiver in football, arguably, on their team. And I go back to this a lot. Like, that playoff game last year against the 49ers in the divisional round is the worst game of Aaron Rodgers' career, and the Packers could not score because Aaron Rodgers was just zoning in on Davante Adams the whole time. That's how the 49ers got the ball back late, and that's really how they ended up winning the game. They didn't even score an offensive touchdown in that game, and they still won. It's the worst game of Aaron Rodgers' career. And when you're the Packers, you got to help your guy out a little bit. I know you're paying him a lot of money, and I completely understand. As the 2-time defending MVP back-to-back, you got to be better. But this team has no chance with its passing game right now. And by not making a move today, it's hard to see them having any chance in the future.
And it's crazy because they actually gave Davante Adams a more lucrative contract than the Raiders, according to Davante Adams. So they were willing to be expensive for Davante Adams. So I don't know why they don't send over a pick or two for a Brandon Cooks, for a Chase Claypool. If the Bears in your division, who are not even, I'm going to give the Bears a little light. They have the same record as the Packers. They both have the same records. And one was like, you know what? I'm going to go all in and give Justin Fields a weapon. So even if we don't make the playoffs this year, we are still going forward in 23, but also trying to do something this year. The Bears could have thrown in the towel as well. We talked about the Jaguars, and I talked about the Jaguars going all in for the next year. The Bears could have did that same thing too, saying, you know what, we don't have enough right now to compete with Justin Fields. Let's add on, all right, or let's punt this season away. No, they went for it. And who's talking about the Bears right now? Everybody talking about the Packers. So the Packers should have went all in for Chase Claypool or Brandon Cooks, or somebody to bring in there to help Aaron Rodgers out. He needs help.
Like Lil, you made a valid point. Like, I didn't see the Bears making a move, this trade deadline. That was by surprise for them to go after Chase Claypool. I like, out of all people, Chase Claypool, but I could see the direction that they're heading in. It's in the start of their rebuild mode. So I guess that they're starting now instead of waiting, for the off season or, in the draft to make it happen.
And I want to address a point that Zach made because I low-key disagree with it. And it's about my Buccaneers trying to be aggressive. Now, I'm not sure, Zach, I'm going to ask you, is it from an offensive, defensive standpoint that you think the Buccaneers should have brought in somebody?
I mean, I'm not even saying that I thought they should have brought in someone. I was just surprised that they didn't make any moves, considering like the division is still wide open. Like they still are favored to win the division. And we say it all the time. Like if you just get Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in the playoffs, they're going to have a chance against anyone. And I understand the Buccaneers, they've made like a lot of moves. They've been in win now mode for a while, and they've been bit by a lot of the older players that they brought in haven't really been living up to the hype. They haven't really been contributing. I was just a little surprised to see that none of the Packers, Rams, and Buccaneers. None of those teams even made a move, because when I said earlier about this trade deadline, it really shows us which teams do we think, which teams think that they're ready to go all in and they want to win. And by those teams not making moves, it kind of just showed me that, like, okay, they must be pretty down on themselves. They're not willing to spend in order to make things better. And I understand it from the Rams and Packers perspective a little bit more, just because things are looking pretty bleak right now. Like, I'll say it, I guess, yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if either of those teams made the playoffs. And I'd throw Tampa Bay into that category, but they play in an awful division. And as bad as things have gone for them, they still are favored to win the division right now. I know Atlanta's in first place right now, but we still have a long way to go. So I was just a little surprised that none of those teams did anything.
No, I'm not really surprised being a Buccaneers fan, because our issues is way more bigger than a talent perspective. Obviously, defensively, losing Shaquille Barrett is not a good thing. I really feel bad for our defense losing him. That's one of our best players, Shaquille Barrett. So I don't even know how to react to that. Right now, my heart is hurting just talking about that, because of, he knows how to get to the quarterback. He knows how to make those game-changing plays. We all saw Devin White getting, listen, I don't even want to talk about the bad game he had against the Ravens. But
on the hub.
I think we had
calling him out for bad effort. Crazy.
We have talent. We have brought in a lot of pieces during the offseason. Russell Gage, Julio, Logan Ryan, Kyle Rudolph, Akeem Hicks. We done our part. It's about these guys doing this and being healthy. All these guys is hamstring, foot injury. So it's all about us being healthy. And the coaching is another element that I really don't want to cross today, because Todd Bowles is a joke. Brian Leftwich is a joke. And they just need to get up out of there. So I think the Buccaneers situation, it's not about adding more talent. That's not going to fix anything. Right now, they are out of sync. Mike Evans and Tom Brady look like they never played together sometimes, right? So they are out of sync. They need to get that rhythm back. They need to get healthy. And that's just bigger than just bringing that acquisition, thinking that that's going to help your offense and your defense. It's not.
I mean, so gentlemen, either one of you can answer this question. How do you feel about Bowles being the head coach? Like, what's different from Bowles from Arians?
Well, Arians, I would tell you this from my experience following the team. The thing that I underestimated about Bruce Arians, because I actually wanted him out of there at various points, what I underestimated about him was his ability to hold players accountable. He doesn't take none of that weehaw. He called out Brady a couple times in the presser. Like, my man's just missed those. Nobody will ever disrespect Brady. You see Todd Bowles, you can go on vacation, Brady. You can go around the world. You could go on tour with Justin Bieber and come back and miss the walkthroughs. You could do all that. Tom Brady, as much as that's my guy and I defend him, I think that he's gotten away with a few things on this team. Whereas if Leonard Fournette came out and say, I want to go on vacation, Todd Bowles would be like, yo, you'll get cut just for asking that. Right. So I think Bruce Arians, he never took anybody's mess, even if it was the GOAT Tom Brady. And he had an established formula of how to conduct an offense. Even if he wasn't calling the plays, he had everything implemented. Byron Leftwich looked better under Bruce Arians. Now that he has a full-time role and there's nobody to cross and exit out his plays, we see how the plays are.
Right.
It's garbage. It's just isolation down the field. It's not, sticks and just getting the ball out. A lot of motion. It's none of that. It's no creativity. It's just isolation. So, yeah, I answered it that way.
Yeah, when you compare, not even comparing the Buccaneers under each guy, but even what they've done prior to what they have done in Tampa Bay, Bruce Arians came into Arizona right away. And keep in mind, we see the Cardinals right now. They're a bad football team. They're a poorly run franchise, in my opinion. Prior to Bruce Arians getting there, yeah, they were lucky to get to one Super Bowl, which somehow they almost won in 2008. Yeah. But before that, they were just awful. They didn't win anything. And Bruce Arians comes in right away and with Carson Palmer just racks up a couple great seasons. And they even got to an NFC championship game. They were one win away from the Super Bowl. So Bruce Arians, even before he got to Tampa, even before he won that Super Bowl there a few years ago, he was already an established and a really good head coach. And we can't say the same thing about Todd Bowles' coach. We saw him 4 years coach our New York Jets. After that game in 2015, Week 17 against the Bills, where the Jets choked away a playoff spot, it was very clear for me very early on, like, yeah, this guy Todd Bowles, probably not a very good football coach. And I said throughout the offseason, like, these everything going on with the Buccaneers needed to be addressed because not enough people were talking about it, and here we are.
And ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Any last words? Any last comments, Zach? Any just overall, closeout takes?
Closeout takes. I think Dolphins going to finish top 2 in the AFC for sure.
Really?
With the trade, for Bradley Chubb, that's going to boost up their D line for sure, and bringing in Jeff Wilson from San Fran, a guy that worked with McDaniels before. So I think that there's going to be major boosts on both sides of the ball. So Dolphins will finish top 2 in the AFC.
Yeah, Coach. We spoke about the Dolphins and how much we love the Bradley Chubb trade. We're in agreement with you. Both think that's a really big move. But one last thing I'll say, there were just a ton of trades, even before the deadline with Christian McCaffrey that not a lot of people even saw coming. I have the full list right here. Even like TJ Hawkinson getting traded to the Vikings. I think that's an interesting move for them. Roquan Smith getting dealt to the Ravens. Coach, you mentioned Jeff Wilson. James Robinson getting dealt to the Jets. It was really the first time I remember that the NFL trade deadline just went off the rails. It really reminded me more like a baseball trade deadline with all the moves that were being made. And I just hope this could be the norm in the future because it was a pretty fun day today, waiting for all the different notifications. And I respect teams following the Rams' approach of being so aggressive, thinking, okay, if we have a chance, let's go for it. But you have to be careful because 3 teams that are not doing so well right now that don't have a first-round pick next year, the Saints, the Broncos. I know the Browns won last night. We'll see where their season goes from here, but they don't have a first-round pick next year. So a lot of these teams giving up draft capital, it's a very interesting proposition and just fascinated by it all, yeah.
I want to close out with some of the guys that were alleged to be on the trade block that remained where they are. Brandon Cooks. It looks like he's not ecstatic of returning to the Texans. Most guys, and I'm shocked about that in a way because Brandon Cooks has been a guy that's been a mercenary, not by his own will, but because he's been traded. I remember having him on New England. I remember before that where he was playing with Drew Brees in New Orleans and the Rams, and he's been traveling all over. And the fact that he doesn't want to stay with a team, past the deadline is shocking to me because of all the movement that he has had. And there's a lot of things when it comes to moving around. You got to do all the things, traveling, family, things of that nature. So the fact that he wants to leave the Texans, maybe the Texans are farther than what people, I'm going to say initially thought, but got led on the other way when Davis Mills was playing well last year. Maybe they really didn't make a step or nothing like that. So that's one. But
Can
also Jerry Jeudy.
About Brandon Cooks really quickly before you go on. Like, I understand he wants to be traded, but he's acting like we're all forgetting about the fact that he signed an $18 million per year extension to stay in Houston for the next 3 years just a couple months ago. And that's really, I think, the main reason why he wasn't traded. The fact that he's making $18 million a year, but he signed a contract to stay in Houston just a few months ago. I mean, the Texans are a little worse than expected. They probably have a legitimate argument to be the worst team in the league after they lost to Malik Willis on Sunday when he only threw 1 pass in the entire second half. But this shouldn't be a shocking development that all of a sudden the Texans are bad. And the fact that he wants to leave, like he just signed an extension to be there.
Also, too, I would say, the Jerry Jeudy thing. He's remaining with the Broncos. I would have liked to see him have another change of scenery, being that he hasn't really lived up to expectations since he's been drafted over there. Also, there's another guy that I'm forgetting, Kareem Hunt, right? That's one thing I thought I would have saw, but obviously, you would have to pay for Kareem Hunt probably the highest price than any other guy. Like we saw Nyheim Hines go to the Bills. They would have had to pay more for Kareem Hunt. So, look, I would like to see Stefanski, now that he has Kareem Hunt back, and I'm not mad they didn't trade him. A lot of people's like, yo, you could trade him. You got Dearness Johnson. Nah, like if your formula is to run the football with 2 backs, even though Nick Chubb is having a crazy year, he might be the best running back in football. Most guys, they could rock out with those guys. Like we see the Titans, they rock out with Derrick Henry, take all the volume. But you have a guy that can share some volume. That's a big luxury because the running backs, we all know the argument with them. They don't last long. They get injured fast. So to have a guy in Kareem Hunt, even though we all know what happened before, with him wanting to be traded, I think keeping him is good unless, you continue to play him more. Like, I think he should play more. I think you should have your best players on the field all at once. Do like the Packers. Play Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb at least 10 snaps per game together on the football field, and I think your offense will be even more dynamic because you don't have a lot of dynamic weaponry on the outside. So, that's my take. We saw guys that we thought were going to be traded, and they weren't, and they back here, and let's see how they second half of the season goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up another episode of 99 Pod. And as always, Zach and Coach and everybody, I'm looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely.